Аз се казвам Еми Барух и представлявам фондация Фотофабрика, която е много доволна и щастлива да завърши годината с гостуването на нашият гостенин от Босна, Дамир Sagolj. Това са задължителните мои думи в началото. Това, което аз си мислих е да не ви разказвам кой е нашият гост, защото той ще го направи по-добре от мен. Босненец, учител, преподавател, режисьор, директор на фондация WORM, носител на Пулицър, на World Press Photo, на При Байе, богата биография, много богато портфолио, един човек, с който в момента се наслаждава на контакта си с младите хора и с преподаването. И за да приключа всичко това, докато още няколко души влязат в залата, реших да избера няколко от неговите цитати, как той представя себе си в публичното пространство. Дамир казва, мисията на фотожурналистиката е да накара хората да научат повече. Тя да бъде визуално напомняне колко велик, брутален, щастлив, тъжен и несправедлив е бил светът някога. Красиво казано. Това, което най-много ми харесва и в което може би съм най-добър, са историите, включващи обикновени хора в големите новини. Не е задължително да е огромна война или природно бедствие. Може просто да е борбата на малък човек с нещо по-голямо, нещо, което му е наложено, нещо, което той дори не може да обясни. Тази борба ме вълнува най-много в работата ми.
That's actually quite funny that in your career it will happen to you also. You would be young and promising, and that people would call you young and promising, and you would think that you are young and promising, and then all of a sudden you will become a veteran. You know, that happened to me. Somehow the whole middle part of the career disappeared. You know, you go from young and promising into the veteran. The peak is almost non-existing. Thank you for inviting me. Thanks to Stoyan, who I know for a long time, who had put me in touch with the Fotofabrika, or vice versa. And they asked me to come and do the lecture. But then I asked them to basically introduce the Fotofabrika, you know, and what kind of organization that is. And from what I understood, and that actually made me say yes, is that this is a grassroots organization, basically the organization that grows things from the foundation. So it's not a top-down institution in which somebody gives the money and say, do it. It basically grows from the foundation, which I liked. So here I am. I will not, Amy said a few words about the introduction, so I'm not going to repeat that. I will talk quite a lot about myself, so no need for introduction. What I'm going to say is that I'm very happy that we are at a film school, if I'm not mistaken, or a performing arts school. So I guess there are a few students from this school too. I teach at the Academy of Performing Arts in Sarajevo, which is a much smaller school than this one. Sarajevo is 5 times smaller than Sofia, but it's a good school. It's actually a very good school. So I talk quite a lot with the students and when the young authors, young and promising. And talking to them, I understood that the transfer of knowledge, as we know from the way we were educated, in which I sit here and tell you something from the position of authority, and then you learn that from me. It's not the way it works. You know, there's a question of authorities in general in the world in which nobody trusts anybody. So why would you trust somebody who is sitting here and transferring the knowledge? So what I do, and hopefully you will see it in this lecture, I just basically cut it to the bone and expose myself to see if any of you could find the motivation the way I found it to do what I'm doing. So there would be no knowledge transfer here, but I'm going to tell you a few things. Overstay my welcome. So the lecture is called Through the Looking Glass, and this is what I'm gonna try to do, is to try to figure out what stands in between the sheer reality to figure out what stands between the sheer reality in its forensics, basically the way things are without anybody's interpretation, the forensics, like the police. So what stands in between that and the image we have of that in our head over the period of time? So what makes the image we have in our head, or what distorts the original forensics that would have to describe an event or whatever? So what is it that distorts the picture? This is why it's called Through the Looking Glass. The looking glass can be, you know, the camera and a lens. You know, it could be your eye. It's also a looking glass. It can be a mirror, like in Alice in Wonderland, or can be something metaphysical. You know, what happens in your brain or in your surroundings that distorts the image, you know, and makes the image that you have in your mind. Obviously, since the photography is my main tool, I would be showing a lot of pictures. All of them apart from one are mine. But I will be not using the word photo or photography that much. I will use it only when I specifically talk about photography. I would rather use the word image, because it's the image that counts. It's the image in our head that we carry. That image can be photographic. Most of the time is the visual, but it can also be, you know, I don't know, a smell, you know, emotions, something else. It all makes an image. So every time I talk about an image, just keep in mind that it's not necessarily just the photograph. It might be just whatever image. I'm going to also use some mathematical equation, which is quite funny to try to explain this unexplainable phenomenon of what happens to the pictures. The photo that wasn't there. It's basically, I want to say about the first time in my life that I realized that there's something special about the photography, the pictures, that is not only a happy snap. There's more around it. It was, I was 10 in 1981, so now you know how old I am. And it was 100th birthday of my great-grandmother. And my great-grandmother comes from the town of Trebinje in Bosnia, which is very close to Dubrovnik, very cool place. Unfortunately, ethnically cleansed during the war. But during the happy times in 80s, we had that's my mother's family, and it was a big family. Actually, quite well off. They had lots of land, and the lady, my great-grandmother, was absolutely the boss of the whole family. She was a widow for 60 years. She had 2 husbands. They both died when she was very, very young. And then she was just the head of the huge family for the next 60 years. She died age 104. So her 100th birthday was a big thing, right? So the whole family gathered. We usually gather on her birthday, which is August 14th. So at that occasion, it was a special occasion, so everybody was there. We had, it was called the Tower, her house where she lived. She had a massive courtyard in which the birthday party was about to happen. So she had 6 children. I don't know how many grandchildren, and then me, the oldest great-grandson, and then so there was a lot of people there. The proper summer party, you know, with the lunches being prepared in an open kitchen, with the whole thing, the music and everything. And at some point, I don't know, who was it, decided that the picture is to be taken. You know, the regular birthday picture, let's all gather for a picture. And they gave the honor to do the picture to my aunt's husband, who was a university professor and always had the latest gadgets. So he probably had some, I don't know, Hasselblad or whatever camera was big at that time, and he was mounting it on one of those tripods. But the crowd that he's about to take a picture was huge, right? And then they start negotiating who's going to be sitting where in the picture. Obviously, the old lady will be in the middle of the picture, but then who's going to be sitting next to her? Is it going to be the oldest children, which is my grandmother and her sister, or it's going to be the sons? Because in a Bosnian, especially, this is a Muslim family. It's my mother's family. My mother comes from the Muslim family. For them, it's very important who carries the family name. So some people were advocating that the sons should be sitting next to the old lady because they carry the dynasty. But then, is it going to be sons then daughters, or is it going to be sons and their wives, and then daughters and their husbands? So that lasted for about, I don't know, too long, and basically the whole lunch that was preparing in Mutvak, which is open kitchen, got burned because they couldn't figure out who's going to be sitting where. It was a little bit like a Fellini movie in which everybody screams and everybody starts directing this very simple picture. I used that opportunity to steal my cousin's air rifle. I remember that well because I was punished after, because it took them so long to set up a single picture. So I thought, what the fuck, there must be something, with these pictures. I fast forward about, I don't know, 20 years, and so let's say 2000. And at that time, I'm already a young, promising journalist, and I was spending a lot of time in Gaza at that time. That was the time, basically very similar to what is happening now. It was the time when the second Intifada started in Gaza, and they had a very, very similar thing that is happening now. And that was my first big conflict that I covered after the Bosnian conflict. I covered a number of small wars. I mean, there's no such thing as a small war. I apologize, but in the sheer scale of it. So the Palestine was the big thing for me. I was 29. I just had the Bosnian War, and a couple of other things. And honestly, it hit me pretty hard, the whole Gaza thing. I grew up there professionally, but also, I hope, I did grow up as a human being too. But what I was seeing very often, and you can actually see it today on the news, you can see it every day, is when the Israeli army, which is very brutal, when they operate, when they do, they call it a cleaning operation, they basically come with the bulldozers, and they bulldoze the house. Those bulldozers are enormous, and they would just destroy the house. They would tell people you have 15 minutes to leave the house, and we'll destroy it. And they've been doing it all quite a lot. Now they're doing it with the bombs mostly, but before they were doing it with bulldozers. And I would be, reporting on that on numerous occasions. Throughout the years, I've been going to Gaza regularly for 15 years. I have probably spent, 2 years altogether there. And very often, I would see the people fleeing. So, if somebody tells you now, you have 15 minutes to leave your home, you have 15 minutes to gutter whatever it's to be saved and, to leave. So people would always be in a panic, what to save from the house. But every single one of them, at the end, the last thing they would take from that home that is about to be destroyed is the family photo. And I would have a picture, literally, of the refugees, and one of them would be carrying this family photo that was hanging on a wall. I've been seeing this quite a lot. And obviously, I'm not the only one. Many people who grew up in Gaza feel the same. You start identifying yourself with that. So I thought about our family photo, which is basically a similar. That place where my grandmother comes from had been, again, ethnically cleansed. Some of my cousins were killed. She died by that time by her daughters, my grandmother, my uncle, and they were all being kicked out. And they lived in Sweden. They actually still live in Sweden. So I thought, where is our picture? I haven't seen it for a long time. So I called my mother and asked her if she can find that big picture of ours, the equivalent of what I've been seeing and photographing in Gaza. When people leave, they carry that framed picture. So my mother said that she will take a look, try to find it, and then few days after she said that she cannot find it. That's why it's called the photo that wasn't there. But I didn't care because I remembered that picture so well. I knew, I thought that I could, because I've been thinking about it every time I would see the picture in Palestine, I would think about it, so I would reconstruct it. So I knew that picture. I think I could reconstruct it pixel by pixel. I knew exactly who is sitting where. I could even remember my uncle's wife who was sitting next to me. She was hugging me all the time, like she was a big woman all the time. I didn't like that too much. But we couldn't find the picture. Half of the family was killed or died. Other half didn't talk to each other. Many of them left the places they lived. So we couldn't find a picture. But it was all right, because I thought, I have it all in my head anyway, so why do I need to have a hard copy of it? I'm going to come back to this story once we finish the lecture. These are basically pictures from my life. That's me in a primary school. That guy with the little camera, that's me during the war in Sarajevo and one of the parties. And then a couple of professional pictures. So, basically, what affects the way we see the world, whether as a photographer or as just a regular person who sees the world or sees the pictures, it hugely, that's one of, now we are talking about what stands in between reality and our perception of it. Probably the most important thing is, it has nothing to do with the photography. It basically has to do with what are you made of, how you see the world. What are the most determinating things that shaped you as a human being? Through what kind of eyes you see the world. And that's, I cannot stress how important that is, who you are. And that's what I'm suggesting to my students and to authors, is to actually ask yourself, what are the things that had shaped you in your life? So in my case, the three things had shaped me more than the others. The first thing is that I grew up as a son of a journalist. My father was he's still alive, retirement, but he was actually a well-known journalist. He was an editor-in-chief of the country's biggest newspaper. He was a correspondent in different countries. So all my life, I basically lived the journalism, even as a kid. I would remember my father's friends sitting until 4 in the morning and discussing things in our home. So I knew quite a lot about the journalism. But at the same time, I'm talking about the formative years, which is between age of, 12 to 18. This is where you're shaped the most. This is where your bones are the softest. So I had this journalism on one side, and I had most of my friends being involved in some sort of visual art. We're talking about 15, 16-year-old kids. But some of them were already taking pictures. Many of them were in the comics. Sarajevo was one of the comics capitals of Europe, or in any other art of visual. And I was among them by far the less talented. And the kids can be fairly brutal, I don't know how is it now, but at that time, if I would make something that is not balanced, the other kids, my friends, would make fun of me, or I would make fun of them. The kids are brutal. So I had this journalism on one side, but I also had this the very early, and I'm very grateful to this, understanding of what aesthetics do to the storytelling, how the sheer aesthetics, what is the role of aesthetics in a storytelling. Obviously, the story is the paramount. It's always the most important. What is the story? But it's also extremely important on how you present that story. And the aesthetics are incredibly important driving force behind the storytelling. So I had these two things growing up. I had the journalism from the family, which is what is it all about, the importance of it, and then all my visual art friends who are basically saying it has to look good, it has to be aesthetically pleasant. Otherwise, no matter what's the story, it's not gonna work because it's ugly. So that's the first thing that shaped me. The second thing is actually my education, believe it or not. I studied in a three different systems in three different countries. I first studied in Moscow. I lived in Moscow in the 80s for 5 years. My father was a correspondent during the perestroika in the Soviet Union, 86, 91. So I studied there, and I am actually engineer by trade. I have a master in power engineering, and that's my original education. I was supposed to be building a power plants, actually doing the automatics for the power plants. And I studied first 3 years in Moscow, and then I moved to Sarajevo for the next 2 years, for the fourth and fifth year. It's 5-year studies. And I liked it. In Moscow, it was the university was called Moskovsky Energetический Institute, which is a 35,000 people faculty, and that had some incredible professors. My favorite being a guy called Israel Abramovich Brin, my mathematics professor, who happened to be the grandfather of Sergey Brin, the guy who started the Google 10 years ago, and who is 2 years younger than me from the same school. And then I continued in Sarajevo, which is not as rigid as the Soviet system of education. It was a bit more opened up. And both professors, Israel Abramovich Brin in Moscow and Božo Matic, which was my main professor in Sarajevo, had this approach that I copied all my life in a journalism, in which they were basically saying, if you want to fish, journalists go and fish for the story. The usual thing would be you sit on a pier, where with all the others fishermen, and you cast your line, and you're gonna get 3 small ones and maybe 2 medium-sized fishes, because this is the fish around the pier where everybody is. They were building engineers in a different way. They would say, go in a deeper water, go away, go somewhere where you don't know what you're gonna get. And even if you don't get it, even if you come back without fish, it's all right. The process, we're talking about engineers, the process of discovering something new, that you go outside of the comfort zone, it's extremely important in engineering, that you're basically probing, trying. That system, I believe it's, can I say, temporarily dead. I believe it's going to come back, the system in which not only the final result that you can sell or monetize counts, which is in today's liberal economy. If you don't bring the fish, you're fried, you're fired. Nobody would be recognizing or validating the process that you have done in looking for the bigger fish, which I find out when I did my master's. The master's I did in the field of documentary journalism in the University of Arts in London, which is probably the best school in Europe for it, and that was completely different. They all they cared is the final product that you can put on a paper, that you can put on a table, and that somebody is going to say, it's good or it's not good. How did you get to it? If you had some experience that were not materialized in that product that you are delivering, that doesn't count. So I liked the education, the previous one, that forced me to go beyond the obvious, to go look for a bigger fish, and that's exactly what I was doing all my life as a journalist. I basically was going past where everybody else would go. I would stay longer. I would go deeper. Very often I would bring nothing, just like fishermen when it goes. But sometimes I would bring the fish that old guys who are fishing from the pier have never seen in their life, because they fish from the pier all the life. So that education, what I learned from the different systems of education, shaped me very much in my life. But the most important thing in my life is something that I've been living in denial. I didn't want it. I didn't want to face that third thing. It's of such a ridiculous important. It's the war in Bosnia. I mean, the fucking war. I was a soldier for 4.5 years during the war in Bosnia, 92, 96. And I lived in Sarajevo, the besieged city. You can imagine how is it. You probably have seen some news on it. But after the war, we all wanted to shake it off. You don't want something as bloody and as ridiculous as the war to be the most important or one of the most important things in your life. You don't want the idiots who are basically the people who started the war, the retards, to be some of the most important people in your life. You just don't. You want education to be, the literature to be. You don't want that to be. So not only me, but the most of my generation live in a denial for a very long time. That basically, we don't care about it. It had happened, and And then on the 20th anniversary of the war, which is this is the only picture that is not mine, because I was not there. I lived in Thailand at that time, so I was watching it on some stupid stream. One of the artists, who is a former dean of the film school in Sarajevo, actually, and a theater director called Haris Pašović, well known, he's been commissioned by a city to make some sort of commemoration for a 20th anniversary, to do, I don't know, an art installation or whatever. So what he did, he had, this is the main street in Sarajevo, it's called Tito's Street. So what he did, he had placed on this main street, he had placed 11,541 red chairs representing the people that been killed during the war in Sarajevo. And there was a symphonic orchestra here under this tent who was basically playing for those 11,000 541 empty chair. So there was no surprise to any of us. We knew the number. It's 20 years after. We knew the number. We actually knew how it's going to look because it took him, 3-4 days to do it. But however, when the thing actually was happening, with the orchestra and everything, when the cameras, I'm watching it on a TV, when the cameras came to the end of it, the very end of it, at the end of it, you have 11,000 chairs, and at the end, you have 1,200 small chairs presenting the children that were killed during the war. And when the camera came to those small chairs, chairs. And then when it came down to the small chairs, we all broke. The whole generation, including myself. That's the moment that the warm foundation that I'm the director now was born, because the whole generation of people who lived in Sarajevo, including many, many big journalists that now are running the whole world of journalism, they all grew up in Sarajevo. We all broke at that moment. And that's the moment when I realized that this bloody war was actually one of the most determinating things in my life, despite me not wanting it to be. I just didn't want it to be so important, but it was. And in engineering world, I'm gonna just as an experiment, I'm gonna use a couple of engineering things. There's every process when you start the car, when you turn on the lights, when you fly a plane, every process goes peaks, and then it goes in something which is like, the cruising attitude. And to calculate this process, the dynamic part of the process is very complicated to calculate. It's very easy to calculate when you hit the flat line. So I realized that basically for 20 years, before understanding that this is a constant in my life that is not going to go away, I was having a problem with it because the mathematics was, in my head, was very complicated because it was a process like this. In one day, I think one thing about it, the other day I think another thing about it. That affects you. So those were the three main things that shaped me as a photographer, and actually as somebody who see things. If you go to the dentist, you will remember your visit to the dentist depending on how much pain that visit to the dentist had imposed on you. That's the picture that you're gonna, that's the first question that people ask, did it hurt? So different image, if it's a different experience. Same with a party. You went for a party last night. Your image of that party would greatly depend on, what happened. What happened during the night. But then, now we know it's the thing that shapes the way we see the world or our pictures if we are a photographer. It's basically what we are, who we are, what are we made of. And now we go into to see more looking glasses that original image goes through. Obviously, the very important one is basically where you look. So now, let's say if we have a firecracker happens here, and half of us would turn head this way, so this would be the image that I remember, and half of us would look at this way, so this would be the image that we have of it. So it's what we choose from 360 degrees around us that is happening in time, and not only a split of second. What do we choose to take an image of? That image can be taken with, obviously, with the camera, but it can also be taken with your eyes. You know, what do you look at when something happens? And that's one of the, I believe, the sexiest thing in a photography. It's that you now, or in creating images, that all of a sudden it's you that is deciding what is going to live forever of everything that surrounds us. You choose a segment, you choose a puzzle of that mosaic that is going to stay forever. Everything else will be forgotten because or you haven't seen it or you haven't taken a picture. Basically, you have to do the frame. You have to choose of all this, whatever is happening around us, what is the one frame that I'm going to do to represent the event the way I want. And that's a super complex task. Every time I take a picture, you know, whether it's something that might be, I don't know, an award-winning picture, or it can be my son playing with our dog, you know, I get very excited, you know, and I actually sweat as I'm sweating now, because I feel the heat of it. I feel the importance of it, because you are now all of a sudden in a position of a creator. You know, it's almost a religious thing that nothing is happening unless you choose that part of the whole thing to make an image of it. You know, so you create things. If you don't do it, you know, it's not going to happen. It didn't happen. And imagine if you are the only one that can record that. You know, if you are the only person with a camera, or only foreigner, or the only journalist, how important it is not only to take a picture, but actually to choose that frame that is going to represent that reality in the future, to make it even more complex. Although that frame lasts only a split of a second, you as an author have to put a lot of things in that frame that goes outside of this very moment and this very place. You have to combine layers and layers of history and a wider understanding of the situation in that one little frame. So, you know, it's not only you point your camera and you click. No, it's you know, you obviously know the history of the place. You know who are the main protagonists, and based on that, you're not going only to choose the slice of the reality, but you're also going to compress as many things as you can in that one frame. The frame is, if there's one thing in a photography that is, you know, the holy thing, it's the frame. You know, how you put everything in that frame, how you position things against each other in the frame, and very often, especially nowadays, when everything is, you know, just to record it, you know, like I have a picture, no matter what is the picture. The frame suffers. You know, the quality of the frame in the world of the photography nowadays, it's going down. It's a huge shame. I judge very often, at least twice a year, some big international competitions in photography, and I can see that the frame is almost disappearing. You know, there's information in it, and they all, you know, There's a lot of things happening, but they all don't work as a frame. You know, in music, if you play music, you play piano, and you want to do a complicated chord, or guitar, you have to execute that chord in a specific manner. You cannot only produce 5 different tones. No, you have to execute it the way it all works with each other, so it sounds nice. Same with the frame. You have 5 elements, you have a background, you have a detail, you have this. These things have to speak to each other, and they have to be performed the same way that the piano player performs those 5 notes that make one chord, if it's a complicated chord. Same with the picture, so it all comes to this one frame, and you are in a charge of it. You are the one who's going to choose of everything, the moment and the perspective that you're going to capture. After that, that's the only thing that exists. Nothing else exists, as it have never happened. So the frame is fairly cool. So another thing that influence how we, what's our image or perception of the world that we are witnessing is, it's from where we see this world. What's the distance from which we are observing the world of photographing, how we position ourselves toward the subject that we are photographing or writing about, or I don't know, doing whatever, from where we are looking at. Probably one of the, you know it all, one of the most important or most quoted quotes in the world of photography is Robert Capa's quote that basically requires you to be as close to the subject as possible. Robert Capa said that if your picture is not good enough, you were not close enough. That sort of works, but not really. I think it's just a nice, sexy thing to say. I think that the distancing toward the subject is it's a bit more complex than just go as close as you can. This is a picture that I shot in Pyongyang in 2010, and actually that's a picture that won a World Press photo the next year that depicts the very central Pyongyang in a dawn. It's 4 in the morning, and that city has no lights, because they're so poor, and the North Korea is basically whole, one extremely poor prison, and the only light in this city center, it's the light that is directed to the painting of Kim Il-sung, the founder of the North Korea. So I saw this picture. This was, I've been to North Korea maybe, perhaps even 10 times or 8 times. This was shot on my first visit to North Korea. And I have seen this picture actually 6 months before by another photographer who regularly travels to North Korea. At that time, he was regularly traveling to North Korea because his company had a deal with the North Korean government, so they could go, 6 times a year. And I was going maybe once a year. So I've seen his picture that is the same as this one, but done from a much lower perspective, so that roof actually cuts the picture, and it's also was done in the wrong time of the day, in which you can't see this grayness and basically the that you can see that the whole place is desaturated of life, depleted of life, apart from the picture. So when I saw his picture, I told myself, if you ever go to North Korea, you're going to go and do this picture better. So it actually happened 6 months after that I came to Pyongyang, and I spent my first 4 days, because I was first, in North Korea you can't work, you can't go wherever you want. You basically, they tell you, you sleep here, you eat here. The government minders, they always with you. There's nothing you can do about it. So I was originally being put in some other hotel, and I know that picture was shot from another hotel called Koryo Hotel, because that friend of mine office is on the 27th floor of that building, and I know that he had taken that picture from that 27th floor of that hotel. So I spent the 3 days basically playing a ping pong with my government minder to become a friend with him. So on a 4th day I can actually ask him if I can move to that hotel. I told him that I wanted to record because this is just next to the train station, the main square, and they have these very creepy sound 6 in the morning from the public loudspeakers that tells everybody, good morning, let's, the creep. So I told him that I wanted to record that sound, so he actually moved me to that hotel, but I also wanted to go to the top floor so I can position myself in space and time better than that friend of mine. And it worked, and it took me, I shot 6 frames, 4:32 in the morning. It took me 35 seconds to take one of the underwear cigarettes from my hotel room. Took me 40 seconds to take one of the best-selling pictures of my career, only because I have positioned myself well to it. I didn't, I was not happy enough just to have it. You have to position yourself in a space and time in a right way. If I was listening to Robert Capa, I would be standing here. I would be standing here and taking a picture. If your picture is not good enough, you're not close enough. So I would say I would rephrase the Kappa's quote. I would say that you have to be, yes, indeed, you have to be close, obviously. You have to be as close to see the smallest detail in a picture, to smell it. But at the same time, you have to be far enough to see the wider perspective of it. Because if you go too close, you don't see the fucking desaturation of life around this portrait. But it's even more complicated. This is probably one of it's 96, I just started photographing. It's, you can see immediately there's something wrong with this picture. Like, what is it, a coffin? It's obviously a funeral, they carry the coffin. This is what they do in a Muslim, the coffin has to be carried by hands. But here, or the coffin is, or the hands are extremely big, or the coffin is small. So this was just outside Sarajevo, was a funeral of a local Muslim priest and his family, and also some other people who were killed in 1992, were buried in mass grave. After the war, they opened a mass grave. They found the body, they identified the body, and they did a funeral. So this funeral was in a village of whatever, and had maybe 20, 30 people funeral. And it was actually quite spectacular. Don't get me wrong, spectacular in terms of visual, that you had, the destroyed village. The war ended 3 months ago or 4 months ago. and you had a lot of people, and you had 20 green coffins being carried and being buried, the whole thing. And I shot obviously millions of pictures, but then this particular picture, when I shot it, when a photographer, I'm sure you know when you take a picture, that's the one. So instead of now finding this, don't be too close, but don't be too far away, it wouldn't work. Sometimes you just need to cut a detail out of the whole thing to basically provoke the viewer to ask himself or herself of what the fuck had happened here. What is it with this picture? If it would be that easy that you just have to find the middle, the not too close, not too far, everybody would be a great photographer. But sometimes it isn't. But sometimes you have to go, into the detail. What it can be more dramatic than a coffin this size with a few bones that remained of the baby that had 29 days when it was killed, together with the whole family. It didn't even have a name. And then buried 5 years after. So the positioning toward the subject is extremely important. From where and how you observe and record the world. So how to find that distance? How to find what's the way to find that sweet spot, from which you will take a picture. Here's what I do. Especially when it comes to the conflicts and heavy stuff. This is a picture of a kid that, I apologize, a lot of these pictures are obviously about some sort of tragedy, but that's what I've been doing, not exclusively, but most of my work, it's about people suffering. So this kid died 45 minutes before I took a picture. It's a Rohingya kid. Some of you probably remember the 2017, the 1.5 million of Rohingya people were kicked out from Myanmar by the Buddhist majority. They were kicked to Bangladesh in what the UN described as something with they call it with the elements of a genocide. They didn't want to call it a genocide because they're not brave enough to call it the way it is. So anyway, this kid ended up with his family and together with other 750,000 people being kicked to Bangladesh and lived in a shitty refugee camp under some makeshift tents. So the temperature in Bangladesh is maybe for 1 or 2 degrees lower than the Myanmar's temperature. It's very hot, but let's say the Myanmar would be 27 and Bangladesh would be 23 degrees. A lot of kids actually were dying of pneumonia because they were so weak. For them, even such a difference in a temperature meant actually that they're going to die. So this kid actually died of pneumonia. No kid in the world should die of pneumonia, okay? So I saw the kid being carried. I was in a camp, the mountains and millions of tents. And I saw a person basically carrying this kid wrapped in a blanket, and you can see it from afar away. It's that kid. Like this. So I went there and asked what happened. I was with my fixer and a friend from UNHCR, from UN. And they explained that the kid just died. And they taking him back to their tent, where they're going to prepare the body for the funeral and bury the kid. And I asked, can I follow? They said yes. So we followed them. And we were all in a tent. So the tent is like this high. And this kid, it's a year and a less than a 2-year-old kid. It's in the middle, and there's 15 people around it. Everybody's crying, and the tent even has some holes, so some kids from outside are. It's all very dramatic and very complex. And I'm just together with the UNHCR photographer and my fixer behind. We are there next to the body, basically waiting for the father to come for them to perform the funeral. And then, at some point, I believe was the aunt, the mother's sister, had opened this blanket and placed these 2 green leaves on a kid's eye, which I have never seen before. I know this place. I've been going to Myanmar since 2011 throughout the whole country, and I know the customs. But this thing with the green leaves, I have never seen. Right? And I knew it's when you see something, you know that this is okay. This is it. And then you need to find the right to position yourself well in order to capture something as strong as this. So how are you going to do it? So how you do it? If I have remained sitting where I'm sitting next to this kid, I would have a picture from the side, and I would have also very dramatic. I believe that I have taken few in which you will have the mother crying, the aunt crying, all the kids looking through the whole big drama. And I ask the aunt through my translator if I can stand above the kid. And she said, yes, you can. And so it was very unpleasant. It's hugely unpleasant that I had to, in that tent, which is, I'm taller than a tent, so I actually have to do like this in order to cut everything that is irrelevant and that is going to divert attention from the most ridiculous and most heavy thing there is. It's the most innocent thing that I don't need anything else around it in order to amplify it. So what's my trick? And everybody can do it. We all have it. In order to find the sweet spot, the right distance, and to position myself toward something like this, I actually use, my scars, mental or real scars, in order to find it's like almost like this metal detector that you go. So how I do that? So let's say you have a scar. It's itching. Scars are motherfuckers. It's itching. So what you want is to expose this scar to, let's say, I don't know, you put a hot ketchup on it, Tabasco. And if it burns so much that you're not capable of holding it, that you go like, oh fuck, that's not good. Then you're too close. It hurts you too much. The scar, it's too live. At the same time, if you put that Tabasco on your scar and you don't feel anything, then it's also not good because you don't feel anything. It's not good distance. But if it hurts, if it really hurts, if it really hurts to the point that you are almost losing control, but you are not losing control, that's the right distance. I shot, I think, 32 frames of this from this position. The light situation in this tent was actually quite all right. I'm up by, this is 2016 or 2017. By that time, I have 20 years of experience, and I should not have problems with having picture in focus. Out of 32 frames, I shot only 3 were sharp because I was shaking, because I found the right distance from which I'm recording it. It's that Tabasco thing that basically it hurts almost to the point of losing control. That's the right distance. And I go around, as I'm going now, I go on the stage, you're looking the spot from which you will deliver the message. I do the same with the pictures, to find the distance, to find the spot from which you, and that greatly influence the image that you will carry of that event in your head, or eventually to the whole world. This picture had won a Pulitzer Prize. Okay, let's see what else we might have in this line of things that distort the picture. This is actually quite a simple thing, and it's the trick that many photographers or videographers are using, in which you actually are recording things through something in order to position it the way you want. This is a picture of again, North Korea, but taken from the Chinese side. I was doing a reportage actually I was doing a reportage of the whole borders of the North Korea, but this particular part was 1,700 kilometers of the border between China and North Korea, which I drove twice. And at some point in the town of Tumen, there's this bridge. And that's the place not far from the area in which North Koreans are doing these nuclear experiments. And people are saying if something, if war happens or something would happen in North Korea, this is the bridge from which the North Koreans would escape to China. So I went there, and instead of having the landscape picture where you can see the river, where you can see the mountains, where you can see this and that, I basically went up to one of the Chinese army positions and was looking through the big binoculars they have, and decided that this picture is actually taken with a mobile phone because the camera cannot, the lens is too big for the binoculars. So it's not only that I have taken the slice out of 360 degrees reality and choose the lens to do it. I actually placed something in between in order to make it the way I want. I made them as if they are targeted. Or, as I do very often, is not to show the whole thing. That's, I think that's psychologically one of the thing that if I would be the young author, I would invest in that, in how not to tell everything, in how to tell just enough for people to get interested, but leave them a little bit for their own imagination to fill in. So what you're doing by it, you are making whoever is looking at the pictures, you're making him an active rather than a passive consumer of the picture. Remember the kid, the picture of a Syrian kid that drowned, you know, the one that became a huge thing. Why do you think that picture was so powerful among the thousands of the pictures of young children who died? Why do you think that one was it was done by a local rescue worker or something? Had no. What is it that make that picture so powerful? It's because you can't see the kid's face. You remember he was turned upside down? So what you can see, you see the body language of whatever was it, 3-4-year-old kid. But you can't see the face. You can't see, is it a little Yusuf or a little Muhammad or Ahmed or whoever? No. You see just the shape, the body of it. And then subconsciously, you are adding the things that are not in the pictures. The face of your kid. This is why it works. Because you had made the viewer active. You had in that case was I believe not meant to be, but it happened. Is the pictures, and when you take a picture of a beautiful lady through the whale, very often it works better than the flat picture, because you see the most important thing, but what you can't see, you basically subconsciously adding to it by yourself. You are becoming a complicit to the picture. You are becoming an active participant in that picture. So this is the same thing with this picture. This picture is basically shot through the window of the bus that had some mud on it, and it's showing just one of the ladies from Srebrenica where genocide happened, when that was the first time when they actually went to see the Srebrenica after the genocide, and it worked because it's it tells you there is a Muslim lady, but it doesn't give you the full detail. It leaves something to you to add up. You're becoming, it's through the whale. That works. You want somebody you talk to, the viewer of your picture, you want him to participate, you want him to care about it. So how are you going to do it? Let him be a part of it. Don't show him everything. You would remember in Susan Sontag's essays on photography from 1975, it's a cool book. Huh? She's provoking all the time. That's what the people do. And she was good in it. So at some point she was accusing the photographers, not in a book, but in some other conversation. She was actually aiming at Cartier-Bresson. I mean, this was not bad. It was for the sake of discussion, of basically going for a photo safari. Going as if you would go for a safari, you go to, I don't know, Africa. You pay 15,000 euros, and somebody takes you to some resort, and you shoot a lion, and you bring the head of the lion back home so it can be above your fireplace. So she was saying that the photographers are doing the same. We would go to the third world, Africa, Bangladesh, wherever, and we would aim our weapon and we would shoot just the way that safari hunters shoot, with a long lens or a wide lens or whatever, in order to have this trophy to bring back home to the first world. So she was doing this, analogy, and she was calling it a class tourism, in which you from the privileged class going to the lower class to bring a trophy out of it. So this picture I shot, and it's actually the picture that I'm not very proud of, but I'm still showing it, in which I exactly did what I shouldn't do. This is it's the biggest prayer, Muslim prayer in Europe, in which 150,000 people come one day in a year and pray one time at some place in Bosnia. And you have and it goes for 489 years, this transition. It's called Ajvatovac. It's pretty photogenic. And it's all Bosnian people. Apart from these two gentlemen that I have no idea how did they look like from Uzbekistan or from, I don't know, maybe Tajikistan or something, that happened to be in a crowd. So of all the 150,000 people, I have chosen to take a picture of these two guys because I wanted my trophy to look as big and as sexy as possible, because they look obviously different than the Bosnian Muslims. Bosnian Muslims look like you and me. This trophy looks bigger. So I basically failed. I did it because it was attractive but not accurate. And very often, and especially in the TV, the people go for the attractiveness of it, how attractive it was, rather than how accurate the thing is. However, this is the picture that I sent out, and you don't see the Bosnians, you see these guys. So not good. Fly on the wall, it's basically what they're teaching you in a journalism school. Basically, go somewhere, be fly on the wall, and record the reality as if you are not there. Fine, but not fine. I had, especially at the beginning of my career with the same company as Stojans, I had complaints from the editors who knew practically nothing about photography, not to have people looking in my camera, and all my life I had people looking straight in the camera. They didn't like it. They said that's, you shouldn't have, like in a movie, you shouldn't have people acknowledging that there is a camera in a room. You have to be fly on the wall, invisible fly on the wall, which I thought it's bullshit. Sometimes yes, but very often being a fly on the wall, it's not the way to do it. So here's a set of pictures that I shot on August 22, 2007, and they were shot in Baghdad. I spent a lot of time in Iraq, even before the war, during the war, and after the war. So at this particular August 2007, I was it's called embedded. This is when you spend the time with the army, with one of the combat support hospitals. Basically, that's the hospital that has like little operation room and everything, and they have lots of helicopters, so they fly and bring people inside that hospital from abroad. So I spent maybe 2 weeks flying with these helicopters and bringing wounded people and this and that. So and at this particular day, was not much happening, so I was just sitting around doing nothing. And then all of a sudden, this on the upper picture, the gentleman in the middle, he's an American. He was there, and he was not supposed to be there. It's a military base, and he was a civilian. So he was there, and he had some sort of a pass. And I asked him, and I saw that he's lost. And I asked him what happened. and he said that his business partners, that's the guy up there, business partner's son, who is 8-year-old, has been shot in the head 10 minutes ago, probably by American soldiers, and the kid is going to die. The kid is at the gate if they don't let him inside the hospital. And Americans are not going to treat Iraqi kid in a hospital. You don't do that. You don't do that for a number of reasons. One of the reasons, if you treat this kid, tomorrow you're going to have 300 kids outside of that hospital trying, because they knew that somebody had helped the kid yesterday. So the parents will bring more kids to be treated tomorrow, and then the suicide bomber will come and kill them all. So the Americans don't want to help. So if you are a fly on the wall, you would be fly on the wall. You would say, okay, I'm a fly on the wall. I'm going to record everything that is happening, and then make a report. Or you get involved, and I get involved very often. I don't care. Fuck it. You don't get involved? Fuck you. Of course I'm going to get involved. The kid is about to die. And you're telling me that I should be fly on the wall and I should not do this and that. Fuck that. So I basically threatened the major who was running the hospital that I'm going to write the most disgusting story on how they treat local people if they don't treat the kid. So they brought the kid in. They saved the kid's life. They sent him to another hospital to do the brain surgery, and 2 weeks after I had an email from this American guy saying that the kid survived. I had the problems in all that. The only problem I had was with my company. They basically told me that there's no report to be done about it because I had created or influenced the whole thing. And I was not a fly on the wall. You can't get involved in things. And I fought. I almost resigned, but I didn't. And then we have a deal that basically, and that's the way it should be. That basically, of course, you can get involved. Of course, you're going to help the kid or a cat or whatever. You will distort the reality that would, or course of the events that would happen differently if you don't get involved. All you need to do is to be open about it, to say, and this is exactly what I did in a story that I published. I basically said, everything that happened, it happened because I have done this, this, and that. Do not pretend that, you have done something and then all of a sudden you're a fly on the wall. So you set up something and then you become a fly on the wall. That's, it doesn't work. But if you do something to the scene and you are open about it, then it's fine. Every picture is anyway auto-portrait of you. We've seen it from the beginning. What you are made of, how you see the world, what is the moment, So what's wrong in influencing it in a different way? Just say, yes, I have moved this phone here from here in order to da-da-da. Just be open about it. It's fine. One of the worst things that stands in between the original, what happened, and our picture is the context in this picture is being consumed. And that's all these things that I mentioned until now, you can control, you can choose it, you can choose the angles and everything. What you can't control is the context. And the context is a motherfucker. In what context your image will be used. I'm going to skip a few things. I'll show you this picture. This is one of the pictures from the Iraq, from the invasion in 2003, and basically shows an American soldier that holds a kid that has some blood on it. There's not much you can see apart from there is a thing between them. He is really moved. He doesn't see me. I'm far away. I position myself very far away so he doesn't move. And the kid is bloody. And this picture was published on, I think it was something like 230 front pages in America Next Day, and it was nominated for a Pulitzer. This is the first time that I was a finalist for a Pulitzer in 2004. And it would be interpreted as, how the American army has a human face. Look at this medic, how he's feeling the pain of this kid. So this is how the picture would be published: the New York Times, the Washington Post, the LA Times. They all had it on the front page. What you don't see is the context that this picture has been taken out. Right? So here's the story. I was with a unit called the 1st Marine Corps. These are the Marines, and those are the guys that are being sent the first. The Marines are the cheapest. They go cut and fight, and then the army comes. So they go first, and they always face things first, and they're very brutal. They kill a lot of people. And I was with them. So they stopped after, this was, let's say, the whole thing lasted for, 20-something days. This was sometimes in the middle of it. So that unit had made the base in the middle of the road somewhere to stay overnight. They needed to wait for whatever, supplies or something. And there was not much happening. Okay, it's a war, but it's not huge, and everything was all right. Then at some point, this car here start approaching the checkpoint, actually driving quite fast, following by the military truck. So the Marines on the other side, they thought, what the fuck? And they start basically firing from all the weapons they have. What happened is that in this little car, there was a family of 7 was trying to escape from these guys toward the Americans to escape to them. And these guys were chasing them. But then the whole hell broke loose because the Americans started firing. Then this truck in the back was full of some Fedayins. They got involved and they started fighting, blah, 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 blah. This is one of the Fedayins from that truck. In the course of the whole, 15 minutes or 20 minutes of the whole mess, the mother of the kid that you have seen in the first picture was killed. The uncle was killed. The father was wounded in the chest. I think that he died later. The sister was shot in an eye by Americans. But all you could see in the newspaper was this picture. Because it's been taken out of context and placed in a context that you can't control. That's the motherfucker. And that's something you can't control, but you have to be aware of it. So we have a picture. We got a picture of something, whether we constructed through the photographs or through other senses, and now we have to memorize that picture. So how the memory works? Very simple. So the brain has different parts. And our memories are stored in the different parts of the brain. the photography is in one part of the brain, the emotions that are linked to that photography are in another part of the brain. And the whole thing, it's a bit more complex. So basically how it works is that sensory input is basically you see something or you hear something, and then you decide that that's important. The part of the brain that is called hippocampus, you will see it in a second, basically decides what is to be remembered and what is not to be remembered. Makes like triage, you know, like okay, irrelevant, to be remembered, and then sends that to something which will then form a long-term memory. So this is how the memory are formed in our brain. Most of our memory and most of our feelings and most of our emotions, something between 67 and 70%, are actually based on what we see. The rest is from what we smell, what we touch, from other senses. So the whole memory thing, it's not one solid hard drive thing. No, it's a process in which things getting lost. You know, we decide it's important, it's not important. So the memory is not a solid thing. It's a very, very dynamic process. So we have these two main parts that are important for forming a memory, which is the hippocampus and amygdala. So hippocampus is the part of the brain that is, among the other things, responsible for making short-term memories and deciding what of those short-term memories would be sent to other parts of the brain to be remembered for longer. So that hippocampus decides that. The hippocampus says, okay, this is important, let's save it. This is not important, let's forget about it. The other part is this amygdala, which is these little, like a two kidney-like, this size pieces of brain that we have left and right. And that amygdala is where all your emotions are stored. You know, all your feelings, and all of them are in amygdala. So you have a part of brain that decides what is to be remembered and sends that raw information, the photography, somewhere else, and then you have the emotions that are linked to that event stored in a different part of the brain. It's very interesting, and it's been used even by my own therapist in dealing with the PTSD and similar things, in which you have the memory split into photography, which is, let's say, somewhere here, and then emotions that are linked to that photography that are in amygdala. Those are the two different parts. So the doctors or the scientists are using different methods in influencing only the emotion part of your memory and not touching the photography. So they would basically not make you forget things, but they would make you feel better about them by doing doing it with the chemistry, with the pills. It's all chemical process, or with some sort of therapy that they only work on the emotional part of your memory. So the picture, the photography remains. Nobody is going to tell you that this did not happen. No, it did happen. But they're going to make you feel not that bad about it. That's how the memory works. The very interesting part is, and it's actually quite fairly new, is it's like last 20 years that we understand now that the memory doesn't work the way we thought since forever. That basically works as a, you know, the videotape, the VHS tape or whatever tape that you record something. I don't know, you record whatever, some celebration, a birthday or whatever. And then you put that tape into a box, right? And then in 3 years, in 5 years, you get that tape to see how was your celebration 10 years ago, right? So that tape, when you play it, sometimes it would, because a lot of time had passed, it demagnetizes, so basically you can't see the picture as clear as originally because the quality of that over the time decreases of that footage. So we thought that that's how the brain works, you know, that basically you remember things and then over the time that the image of of that event that you retrieve is the same but the pale, you know, it's not as vivid, just like a videotape. However, that's not the way the things work. And that's very recent and it's very exciting. Basically, our memory is not a read-only thing. You know, it's not something that you remember and then you bring it out every 6 months to read it and then put it back. If you would look at it as a computer file, there's, you know, read-only files that you can't do anything about apart from reading it, you know, like. Or you have the files that you can retrieve from your memory and edit and work on it, and that's how our brain works. It works that you get your zip file from in your memory and you open it up in your brain and you actually edit it. You know, the way you would edit a computer file. Computer files. And that's how the therapists are treating the PTSD or whatever traumas, is that they basically recall your memory by exposing you to something that is similar to it, you know, whether it's a smell like in Camus' books, or a picture, or a sequence of things. So your memory has been retrieved, opened up, and then they work on it, whether they work, because it's in an open edit mode, you know, the memory. Then they influence the certain part of brain to alter the memory the way it would help the patient. You know. I play Bubbles, you know, the video games. The one that makes no sense on a mobile phone. When I step on something that recalls some of the problematic memories that I have, so I'm aware that I'm in an edit mode, and the therapist basically told me to find something that is brainless, but it's very visually very aggressive, and has a sounds like this video game that actually helps the emotions that are being recalled together with the memory go down, and it actually works. So that's how our memory works. It's not the read-only thing; it's the process. So this is almost the end of it. There's a professor in UCLA and Berkeley and a couple of other universities. Actually, she's retired now, called Elizabeth Loftus. And she got herself in a big troubles by telling the American public and jurisdictional system that the way that the courts are operating are not the best way, because it's based on people's testimonies and on people's memories. You know, you ask somebody what had happened and that person tells you, and then you put somebody in a jail or release him because somebody, you know, have said that. That's the way, you know, we operate. So the Professor Loftus, she's fairly cool. Check her out on a YouTube. She had picked up a case from 90s in the States in which a man was arrested and convicted. He was put in a jail. He died in a jail very young, being accused and sentenced for a rape. So what happened is that a lady was raped in some village in the States, some small place, and she could not see it was dark, and she could not see properly the perpetrators of the crime, and the perpetrator or perpetrators escaped. So the police did the usual procedure. They had, I don't know, detained all the male between 20 and 40-year-old in 30-kilometer diameter, and they took a picture of those people, and they brought those pictures to the victim, which is the usual procedure, right? And the lady said that, you know, she thinks it could be this guy. So they brought the guy. The guy said that no, he was having a dinner with his wife with 20 other witnesses. However, that didn't work. The judge had trusted the victim because she said it could be him. She had moved from "I think it could be him" to "I'm 100% sure it's him." So the guy got sentenced, sent to the jail, gets a stroke and dies. 3 years after, this is why it's called memory versus DNA. They started doing the DNAs that they're collecting but not doing. And it turned out that was not him, it was the other guy that was also on a picture, but she did not recognize him. So based on a picture. And then she said that that was what basically pushed her in a big trouble. She lost a job, but later she got the job back. It took her 7 years. She has a number of PhDs and everything, but she was a declared persona non grata in her university, and because she was basically questioning the system in which we do things, that we believe what people say, and based on what they say, we sentence the people. Which brings us now to the end of the lecture. So remember the picture from the beginning, the picture that wasn't there, the picture, the family picture, the big picture that my mother couldn't find, that I remembered everything, all these 60 people with all the food and everything. So I think it was something like, 2015 or something. My mother called me and said, you know what, I found that picture. And I thought, wonderful. Now we can actually frame it and have it on a wall, this big picture. So she found it in some box with some land deeds from the past. So when I came back to Sarajevo, she gave me this picture. It says on the back of the picture, it says August 14, 1981, the birthday. So basically all I told you about that picture was the myth that I constructed in my head by bringing that memory and edit it. And every time I thought about it, every time I saw a Palestinian family carrying that picture, I recalled our picture and I played a little bit with it. I add more importance to my family. I add more strength to it because I wanted it to be big. You know? That's the old lady, the little one. That's my mother in front of her, my uncle, my aunts, my grandmother, her sister. Then Farid, that I thought was the photographer, all of a sudden he's in a picture, and the picture was not taken by Hasselblad, but by this piece of shit. Pocket camera. I wanted my family to have Hasselblads. And then there's me and my father. Where are the others? I don't know, I made them up. You know? So that's what stands in between reality and the picture of that reality that we carry in our head. So the memories are not to be trusted. You know, they're fragile, they can be sexy, but they're not to be trusted. The only thing that can be trusted is the picture, no matter how many looking glasses it goes through. So that's about it.